Awesome video, Gary. Awesome video. I was told by people whose opinion I value that you really had the ability to really nail the main point of a conversation and really articulate the issues at stake. And you certainly proved that in your latest video. I enjoyed watching it immensely, and I enjoyed thinking about the issues you raised quite a bit. So let me do my best to respond to them here. Okay, I had no idea the depth of your determinism, Gary. I mean, you are really, really deterministic. Not just in what you believe about the world. I mean, the extent of your determinism goes even to your epistemology, right? To really highlight this, let me just take the liberty of quoting at length from what you said in the last part of your video to me, okay? You said, in order to use inductive reasoning, in order to say that science has any ability for us to gain knowledge about the world that's useful, the basic assumption there is that there is cause and effect. And in order to say that causality could possibly be non-deterministic, you'd have to redefine the word in such a way that it doesn't even have any useful meaning. And so, in essence, it destroys any ability to use evidence to actually support a case. I mean, wow. I'm actually tempted at this point to say, there's nothing I can do. I mean, if I'm trying to demonstrate to you that the world is non-deterministic, I pretty much can't use any evidence to support that case, right? I mean, I can't make any knowledge that's useful about it. I can't. I can't even get off the ground, right? I mean, the assumptions that you have about the way induction works, really, I mean, you win. I mean, it precludes any possible argument I could bring against you, and in that sense, your position is completely impregnable. But of course, the fool that I am, I'm going to try anyways to to do it. Since I can't use any rational information to prove this, let me try some irrational thing. Argument from authority, right? That has absolutely no logical basis whatsoever. I have several books on presenting theories of induction. Richard Jeffries here, Dempster-Shafer theory. One of my favorites, E.T. James's probability theory of the logic. I mean, I don't know of any theory of induction, okay, that was mooted in the last 100 years that assumes that the world has to be deterministic in the way that you're describing. If you could give me some article or some reference or somebody who puts forward a theory of induction or how the scientific method works or anything like this, which so presupposes causality and hard determinism in the way that you're describing, I'd appreciate it. I am unaware of any such theory, because I think anybody who would propose such a theory, it would pretty much be dead on arrival, because since quantum mechanics came to town, we've really had to rethink some of these assumptions about determinism, and any theory of induction that assumes that these particles from the get-go are deterministic seems like it wouldn't really fit with the way the majority of physicists work these days. And with regards to cause and effect in physics, I bandy about the terms cause and effect quite a bit. I think they're perfectly good terms to use in terms of folk psychology or if you're just casually talking, right? But in point of fact, our best and most confirmed theories of physics today don't use the concepts of cause and effect at all. Okay, this is a somewhat surprising contention, but it's really true. I'm going to point a link to a paper by a philosopher of science called Hartree Field, who has a nice paper on this. Pretty much since Bertrand Russell on, the notion of causality in science has been very suspect, and you might find it interesting to just give that paper a read through. His contention is basically that the laws, Maxwell's laws, quantum mechanics, all these things, even Newton's laws, which as you point out are completely discredited. Okay, any theory of physics that we have today basically does not use the notion of cause and effect. So you might find it an interesting read. Okay, the rest of this video and probably the next video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to try to answer your question that you posed here for me, right? What is the difference between treating people as if they had free will versus treating people as if they had will? And this really is the crux of the matter, okay? So let me articulate this out here just to ensure that I really understand your point. So basically, my argument that, my evidence that people have free will is that we treat people as if they have free will, right? An intersubjective stance, when we're treating other people, we're getting along with other people, we actually do treat them as if they have free will, okay? Gary's question is the following, okay? Correct me if I misunderstand it, but here's how I read it. Okay, if there's no difference between treating people as if they had will versus treating people as if they had free will, then this will drain my argument of all of its evidence, right? So Gary's question is a pertinent question, and I really do need to address it in order to in order to make my case. Okay, so as my point of departure here, and with all due respect to miscellaneous, and by the way, anybody who creates her own keyboard, several keyboard layouts, so she can play her own music using a scale of her own choosing, I have immense respect for. So with all due respect to Elaine, miscellaneous, I'm going to resurrect my humble pie example, okay? So basically, suppose I have a couple of kids, and I have one pie that I have to split between the two of them, right? So, how am I going to treat this situation? Well, for this kind of thing, we look naturally to the philosophy of Daniel Dennett, right? The intentional stance. Okay, we have to describe the situation using the intentional stance. What I call the normative vocabulary of agency, right? So let's see how this works here, right? So what do the kids want? Okay, they want a fair slice of pie. Okay, so I put fairness in this blue bubble here, right? So parts of the theory, here's the visual convention. Okay, parts of the theory that are phrased in this you're taking the intentional stance, phrased in this normative vocabulary of agency, I'm going to put in blue bubbles, right? So what the kids want is they want a fair slice of pie. And notice this doesn't constrain my actions, how I cut the pie, deterministically, right? This acts kind of like on my actions, kind of the same way a speed limit sign acts on cars driving down the road, right? Okay, now here I am. My intention is to cut the pie in a fair slice, right? So, since the kids just want a fair piece of pie, right? They won't complain if I cut the pie a little crooked, just as long as each one gets a fair slice, right? So, say my intention is to cut the pie, vertically down the middle. My intention does constrain my future action a bit more, and but there's still some wiggle room there, right? Okay, now notice I'm prepared to concede for the moment Gary's other point, that is not just, okay, and Gary, I wasn't trying to straw man you here, okay, let me highlight this, okay. Gary's saying Gary is saying yes, okay, the fairness non-deterministically constrains the actions, but there's other factors, other physical factors which come into play, which makes the whole thing deterministic, okay. Let me just concede that for the present moment, right, okay. Okay, nevertheless, okay, my intention doesn't include any of those physical factors. My intention is to vertically cut this pie in a fair way and divide it evenly among the kids, right? So now, what is the evidence that the intentional stance was the right stance to take here? Okay, it's the smoothness of the transaction, right? If I can cut the pie and give it to the kids and the kids are happy, the kids agree I did what I should, okay, more normative stuff, then that's the evidence that taking the intentional stance towards the kids was the correct thing to do, right? So now notice, this is an important point here, okay? Every stage of this transaction happens in blue bubbles. In other words, it happens in this normative language of agency. It happens in the intentional stance, okay? The kids want a fair piece of pie. They don't want pie atoms, right? They don't want any particular configuration of pie atoms. What the kids want is expressed in the language of the intentional stance, normative vocabulary of agency, right? What my intention is also, expressed in there, okay? Now, Gary's point is there may be some other physical stuff that's coming in here, okay, granted, okay, but, okay, this transaction happens in the blue bubble level, and the evidence that the transaction was a correct transaction, or that it was correct to take the intentional stance. The evidence for that, the empirical funding of this, is also phrased in the normative vocabulary of agency. All right.